Today I'm making a cute little cake topper. It's the main character Turbo the snail from the new Disney movie Turbo. So the tools and equipment we need for Turbo is some orange fondant, dark blue fondant, a little piece of white, red and black fondant. To colour those I used orange, blue food colouring. I used a black and also the red. The other bits and pieces we need is a little wooden stick with a pointy end and a round tip at the other end, some pliers, a spatula, an X-Acto blade, roller, a paintbrush and some water. I use a little pizza cutter and also a length of wire. And that's all the tools we need. We can get started. To start with, we take our orange fondant and roll it into a little bit of a log. And as we go along, I'm going to start forming the head and neck of Turbo. So we just try and squeeze the fondant in a little bit there so it's a little bit narrower, and then with the top part make it into a little bit more of a round shape. Keep squeezing in the middle of the neck if you can. Okay. So we've got our basic shape there. We'll continue working on that as we go. And squeeze out the body. And we'll try and make the back into a little bit of a point. Not too pointy, but just enough so that we can see that it is the body of a snail. Now in the middle section here, I like to squeeze up the centre so that when I eventually put his shell on, rather than putting it on a flat surface, if I make an indentation in the shell, it will grab on the side and sit like that. So basically that's the sort of shape we're going for. And once we've got that, we just smooth out any of the finger marks before we move on to the next stage. So now that we've got our basic shape, what I want to do is make a little bit of an indentation for Turbo's mouth. So I take this little wooden tool with a bit of a point in there and basically carve out very gently at first a smile like that. And then once we've got our basic shape, just press it in a little bit so that we can see there's a nice grin there. Smoothen out any pointy marks. And you can see if you just give it a little squeeze on the side, brings it all together nicely. The next thing I'm going to do is work on his eyes. Now he has these little stems that come out from his head. I think they're called stems, and then it connects to his eyeballs. So what I've done is cut two little pieces of wire, and I've got a little piece of orange fondant. I'm going to roll into a little bit of a log, break it in half. Basically just take that little piece of orange fondant and gently insert the wire through, and make sure you've got some wire at either end poking out, and one end we'll put into the top of his head like that, and the other end we will put his eyeball on once we've done. So we'll do the other one. To make the eyeballs, what we're going to do is use some white fondant, make two round balls. There we are. Just make sure they're proportional to his head, so we'll just hold it there and that should be about right. What I want to do now is get some of the orange fondant. I'm going to roll it out fairly thin if you can, enough so that you can still manipulate it and manage it without the fondant tearing. Okay. And now I want to cut out a rectangle. Pick it up and we're going to wrap it around the eyes. So we'll do one eyeball first. take off the excess, put it to the side, and at the back of the eye, bring all that orange fondant in together so we close up the gap. You can see that closes up nicely, and we've got the round centre in white of his eye. We'll keep that there. We'll repeat the process for the other eyeball. Now before we fix the eyeballs onto our little antennas or stems of his eyes, we're going to add the colouring of his eyes. Now he has blue eyes, Turbo has blue eyes, so we'll get out a bit of our blue fondant. We don't need very much, just a tiny little bit. Perhaps that is enough for both eyeballs. Tiny little circles. Press it down a little bit, and then we're going to attach it to his eye. We could even just pop it up like that. There we go. And just press it down gently till you get a little bit of a flatter iris, and also that we get the nice round even shape that we're after. Always make sure that both eyes are the same size. There we are. Now we're going to put the black pupils of his eyes. We just need the tiniest little amount of black. There we go. Again, make two tiny little balls and we can attach them. Because our fondant is fairly moist at the moment, we don't really need to use any flour glue or water. If it's a bit hotter where you are or a bit drier, you're most welcome to use a bit of water or flour glue to adhere them. There we are. So you can see our two eyes. Now it's just a matter of inserting them through the wire. I just would like to add some detail to his mouth now, so I've taken a little bit of black fondant, roll it out fairly thin. And what I'm going to do is insert this into the mouth cavity that I made earlier. We just need to pick it up, and with our little wooden tool, just blend it into his mouth. And if you rub the sides of the mouth joint up, get a nice little grin. There we go. We're just going to also add a tiny little bit of white fondant for his teeth, so just the tiniest little amount, about that much. Put that up the top. Take our little tool, blend it in. What I'm going to work on now is the body. About some blue fondant, and it's good before we start, just check the proportions. Perhaps I need a little bit more fondant than that. Okay, what I want to do is roll it into a ball to start with. And then we want to pat it down, basically taking off the edges of the ball, so we end up with a shape like this. And then gradually with our finger bring out a bit of the back, make a bit of a lip, so that we get that shape. So that's the back of his shell, and also around the other side. We want to lift it up a little bit, so it can conform to the back of his neck, and also underneath really press in and make a hollow in there so that this part of the body, we're going to sit it on there so it can sit nice and snug. So just with your little finger you can dig a little cavity in there and just smooth it all out. What I need to do now is make the two sides of Turbo's shell a bit more rounded, and this is where he has his air vents or exhaust vents or something like that. So we just take 2 pieces of blue fondant, around about that size, just move the shell to the side, roll it into a ball, and what I want to do is I want to make the side of the shell stick out a little bit, so I try and flatten the ball I just made into a flat shape like that, and then what I want to do is pinch one side so that the edges become nice and thin, and with the other side I want to push with my fingers to try and make it a little bit pointy, so we end up with almost like a soft pyramid type shape. It's starting to look a little bit like a pointy frisbee actually, you can see there, like that. And then what I want to do is just add a little bit of water on a paintbrush just there and adhere it to the side. Once we do that, just use the fingers to try and make the join a little bit seamless. There. Just smooth it round. Now we'll do the other side. Front on, that's what it looks like so far. Now Turbo has these exhaust vents, I think they're exhaust vents. So what I'm going to do here is use my wooden tool and poke in 3 holes like that on that side, and again 3 on the same height on the other side, just like that. There we are. And now what I want to do is make another little, I think it's an air vent or something up the top. So we take another little bit of fondant, roll it into a ball. Now roll it a little bit more into a log, and we're going to pinch the back so it's a bit more pointy, so we get that sort of a shape. Again, we'll take a little bit of water, put it at the top of his shell, adhere this down like that. And what I want to do is poke into the fondant at the front so we can make it into the shape of an air vent. So just keep using the tool like this to open up the fondant. There. It's a little bit hard as I'm working from the back so that I can give you the best view, but hopefully just check it and make sure I've done the right thing. Yeah, that's what we're after. Perfect. Before we finish with all of the blue fondant, what we want to do is make his spoiler at the back. So what I want to do is get a length of wire and cut 2 small pieces, about 1 centimetre each. And like what we did with the stems for his eyes, I want to cover those 2 pieces of wire with blue fondant. So again, just make 2 little logs and we insert the wire through the fondant. And what we do is poke that into his top of the back of his shell, just like that. Finally, what we need to do is roll out a piece of blue fondant so we can cut out the spoiler. We don't want to make it too thick. and not too thin. So about 2mm thin. Cut out a rectangle, and we can rest that on the top of the little pieces we just poked into the back. There we are. What we're going to do now is add the detail to Turbo's shell. So we're going to add some white fondant here and a little bit here, and we're going to try and put some swirls on the sides of his shell. So first of all, roll out our fondant. Try and get it about 1mm thin this time. We don't need it so thick. Now I'm going to cut this shape out here, so perhaps start off with a rectangle. Pick it up. We're going to put it in the front here. It's just like a racing stripe, I guess. Now that one's a little bit too long, so we can just trim that. And once we're happy with the shape that we've got, we can use a little bit of water on our brush to stick it down to the shell. A piece of that white fondant that we rolled out before, we're going to cut more of a triangular shape to go across this top vent. So that's the shape we're after. We'll just pick it up, the shell, and make sure it's going to fit on top of this air vent we made. Okay, and once you've got the shape that you're happy with, just check from the front as well. We can adhere that with a bit of water again. Now to make the swirl around the edges, what I'm going to do is just make sure it's nice and thin, the fondant's nice and thin. Cut out a long length of white fondant, as narrow as I can. And one more for the other side. Pick up one. And what we want to do is try and create a swirl. Do the same for the other side. What I want to do now is add a little bit of detail to the front of this air vent. I want to do a round semicircle white piece. So take a little bit of white fondant and roll it into as thin a log as we can. Put a tiny little bit of water. Continuing with our detail, what we want to do is take some red fondant, and we want to make some red racing stripes and another broader red stripe across the top. So to make the two stripes, again, we'll just roll it into quite a long piece of fondant. Finally, what we want to do is take a little piece of black fondant and roll it out into quite a long piece so that we can cut out number 5 to stick there.